Hello, everybody. How are you today?
Hello, how are you, ma'am?
Hi,
All
Vicky. We
good.
miss you in the toot.
Ah, yes, I know. Apparently my workload is too high.
Hmm. Duncan's very nice, but he's not Vicky.
My favorite thing is the toots, but that's not how it works, apparently.
Hmm. It sounds like it was out of your control.
Yes.
Hmm.
All right. Let's share and we'll make a start. So I'm just going to start with the acknowledgement of country. So I like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet and learn, pay my respects to their elders, past and present. I also extend that respect to any First Nations people joining us today. So today we're going to talk about learning outcomes and goals. Um, I know that I sort of talk to you about learning outcomes every week when I talk to you in the tutorial. But this module, Module 5, is about planning and monitoring and reflecting and self-regulated learning, which is one of my favorite topics. Um, so we're going to sort of focus in on the learning outcomes in the workshop, and then we're going to look more closely at self-regulated learning in the tutorial. So self-regulated learning is one of the biggest predictors of achievement across all ages. It's not just about being motivated. It's about having a way to steer your own learning. So you've got to set intentions, not in a woo-woo way, but set intentions, choose strategies, and check progress. And you need to be able to adjust when things get difficult. And that's where um, the most problems happen for most learners. So uh, my PhD is in self-regulated learning in tertiary students, but you can apply it to younger students as well. And it would be awesome if all uni teachers taught this all the way through so that when they got to uni, they knew how to do it because these are lifelong learning skills. There certainly are some cognitive limits, though. Okay, so we need to think back to Piaget when we're doing it for younger students. There's definitely developmental limits to when you can start introducing self-regulation. Okay, so you're going to start with emotions and things like that, and then you want to move into other areas of self-regulation. So we're going to start with the learning outcomes because if the student doesn't understand the outcome, then they can't plan their learning and they can't monitor their progress and they won't be able to reflect or evaluate at the end of it to see where they need to go or what went wrong. So I've spoken lots about Bloom's because I think it is useful. So there has been some updates to Bloom's, and for those of you working in probably primary school and maybe the secondary school as well, there's some other dimensions, but Bloom's is only talking about, or this shape of thinking is only talking about cognitive skills. Okay, so there's other pyramids for other skills, but we're just going to focus on the cognitive skills because it gives us a useful way to think about the kind of thinking that a learning outcome is asking for. So even the pyramid structure is not strictly correct in a literal sense, like create is not always at the top and things like that. And it's not really that linear. So you don't always start at the bottom and climb to the top. Sometimes you're doing two things at once. So they might be trying to remember and understand something as well as create something new. But generally speaking, you need to have a certain amount of remembering and understanding, so schema development, before you can do apply and analyze and the rest. Okay, so those ones are usually called lower order thinking skills, and then the rest are called higher order thinking skills. So one of the ways that teachers communicate the level of thinking required to the student is through the task verbs, and I've been pointing them out to you in the tutorials. Okay, so you'll see things like explain, describe, summarize, for more foundational thinking, and then you might see things like analyze or evaluate or justify when you're talking about more higher order thinking. Secondary school teachers are going to recognize this much more than primary school teachers, because in like the stage 5 and 6 syllabuses, they use these verbs all the time. And when I was teaching high school, in all of the science classes, in all of the English classes, there were the verbs pinned up on the wall all the way around the room, so that those higher age students were getting ready for the way the exam questions were going to be written for the HSC. So they rely very heavily on this. In higher education, almost all the learning outcomes are written this way. It's been, researched, and it's best practice now at most universities to use these task verbs. So even though it's not a literal ladder, it's still a helpful tool when we are unpacking outcomes. All right, so I think I have a Menti. All right. Oh, where's my chat gone? Let me just put this in the chat. For the Menti, and I will put the number in for those that like to do it on their phone. So just see if you can sort these task verbs from higher to lower order. So put the highest ones at the top and the lowest ones at the bottom. All right, so again, this is not a test or anything. It's just a, quick activation activity to help you notice that different tasks require different kinds of mental work. But again, it's better to participate than to sit on the fence and wait for the answer, because it's better for your brain. All right, let's have a look what on average we thought. Okay, so create is at the top. I would put identify at the very bottom myself, because that's generally just about recognizing something. So when you learn the names of things, you are identifying them. So for me, identified would go at the bottom. The other two are debatable, because evaluate used to be at the top of the pyramid. When Bloom's wrote it, evaluate was at the top, not create. And then when it was redone, they moved evaluate underneath create. So yeah, but for me, identify is a low order. All right. So now that we've warmed up, I want to talk about something that is often missing, not just in schools, but in higher education as well, and that's task analysis. So task analysis simply means unpacking the hidden work inside the task. So when we give students a learning outcome or an activity, it might look very simple from the outside, but the cognitive work inside, the thinking and the decisions and the micro skills, are often invisible to the students. And this is one of the reasons students can feel overwhelmed or confused, even when we think we've explained everything clearly. So by unpacking a task, we help students to see what kind of thinking they need to do, what skills they need to draw on, what strategies might help, and what success could look like. And in my experience with range of first-year students at university, they're not very good at it. So that means they're not very good at it at school too, okay? If we can do all that, then this step would dramatically reduce cognitive overload because it lets students set much more meaningful learning goals and they're no longer guessing about what this task involves. So this is where we sort of start to get into self-regulated learning, because this part where we look at the learning outcomes and we do the task analysis, that's part of the forethought phase in self-regulated learning. So we plan, we activate relevant knowledge, we choose strategies, and it prepares us mentally for the task ahead. If the task isn't unpacked and you just jump straight in to the content and start doing the performance phase, you're kind of learning blindfolded. But when it is, we can steer a bit better. So on the next slide, I'm going to give you a simple primary school English example, and we're going to walk through the process step by step. And I picked primary school because they're a little bit, the way that they write those is a little bit different and not quite as intuitive as the secondary school ones. All right. So in the curriculum documents, they have things that are really broad for K to 10. They'll say things like reads and reviews texts and uses information. And you as a teacher are going to make a specific learning intention for the lesson. Okay, you might say students are going to summarize the main idea of an informative text. So if we look at that, we can see that summarize is the verb that is signaling the level of detail that the students need. We can see that's not a remember thing. It sits a little bit higher. So it requires students to understand the text, what the text is saying, and analyze which ideas matter most and rephrase those ideas into their own words. And here's a really important thing about lifelong learning. In the early years of schooling, the teacher is doing all of this cognitive unpacking for the students, and that's the way it should be. Okay, they interpret the curriculum, they choose the verbs, they break down the tasks, they plan the strategies, and they decide what success looks like. And the students simply experience a really nice learning journey. Okay, but in high school, when you want them to start thinking on their own, and certainly when they get to university and they're expected to take on more of this cognitive work themselves, they can't do it because it's been invisible for so long, all the way through school, that many students don't even realize the shift that happens when you go from high school to university, because the teachers are doing everything all the way up until year 12. And they come to university and we're like, well, you know what the Bloom's verbs are and you know what explain means, and they don't. Okay, so they say things like, oh, they're making me learn it all on my own, even though we provide lots of resources. Because we're not doing that invisible work that we need them to do in order to build the schema and learn the lifelong learning skills, then it's a much bigger load. They weren't expecting that. So as learners progress through primary school and high school, teachers need to start making that invisible work a bit more visible so the students can begin doing some of the cognitive unpacking themselves. And that will help with lifelong learning, because those are the things that you need to do when you want to learn something later in life. You're going to have to think about, what skills, what do I got to look up? How hard do I need to think about that? So let's have a look at the kinds of things that would be involved in summarizing a text. Oh, I got a Menti. Okay, so to summarize the main idea of a text, which action does a student need to do? And you can choose, I hopefully have set this up right, you can choose more than one. If I haven't, then I guess bad for me. I'm still learning Menti because I used to have Echo 360 and it was a bit different.
Seems like we can only actually select one of those.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's a bummer.
I was just about to say that.
Thanks for letting me know. I'll have to fix it for the next time I do this.
Should we just choose the best one, Vicky, or?
Well, let's talk about it instead. All right, so we can see here that we would pick a certain, a bunch of them. We wouldn't have to guess based on the picture, although pictures are important, and that is an area where novice learners often skip looking at pictures, whereas expert learners do look at pictures, but we don't want to guess. We don't want to copy the first sentence, but we do want to put things into our own words. We do want to, did I make a spelling mistake again? I did. Distinguish between interesting and important ideas, because just because it's interesting doesn't mean it's important. We have to understand what it says. We might want to notice, certainly don't want to pay attention to every detail. We might want to notice repeated or emphasized words, because that might give us a clue to what's important. Okay, so I would pick that one as well. Yeah. All right, good job. All right, so after that, we're going to think about what kind of background knowledge that they need. So to summarize something effectively, they're going to need vocabulary. If they don't have all the vocabulary, then it makes it more cognitively heavy for them. They need to understand the idea of a main idea. They need to have some familiarity, goodness me, with text features like titles and headings and things like that. They need to be able to write, and they need to have some sort of schema in the back there, background knowledge to make sense of things. All right. Oh, that's my Menti question. It's not popping up as a Menti question. Gee, I'm having a bad day today. It's all that marking from last week. I have to tell you, that did take up a lot of time. All right, which strategy fits the task better? We'll just put it in the chat. So which one will we do? A, B, C, or D? So for this, we are now in the performance phase. So if we're talking about self-regulated learning, thinking about how to do it and planning and the strategies we were going to use, that's part of forethought. And then once we start doing the strategies, we're in the performance phase. So even if students understand the task and have the right background knowledge, they still need a strategy to help them carry out the micro skills effectively. So on the Blackboard, I'm not sure if it's this week or next week, I can't remember. There's stuff about learning strategies like rehearsal strategies and organizational strategies and elaborative strategies. So using a main idea organizer is an organizing strategy. So we need to have a learning strategy. How are we going to interact with the material? So that's feeding into that germane load. All right. So strategy use isn't about working harder. It's about having a tool that supports the micro skills required for the task. And this is important for lifelong learning because students often don't realize they're allowed to choose strategies consciously. They think success comes from natural ability or from simply trying harder. So, students often will come up to you and say, oh, I study really hard. I worked really hard on this. But you need to sort of dig down a little bit and work out what their strategies are. What is that? What is working hard? Does that mean you read it 50 times or you made a concept map? What is working hard? So if we can sort of make those things more explicit, then learners can begin to recognize when, different strategies and when to use them. So, okay. So another thing we want to do is we want to change our outcome into a goal. So every week I put up the learning outcomes for you. And, we're using this one here. Students will be able to read a short informative text and summarize the main idea in their own words. And then you want to model changing that into an actual goal. Okay, so not every time, obviously. You just want to do this periodically to get them into the habit of it. So this is still part of the forethought phase, but eventually you want to get them to the point where they're like, okay, I'm going to read the text and I'm going to write one clear sentence in my own words that explains what it's mostly about. Okay, that's what that outcome, when we turn it into a personal goal, that's pretty much what it is. All right, so it's short, it's actionable, tells the student exactly what it looks like to succeed. And it's tied to all those micro skills that we just unpacked. But if we don't ever show the students how to do this, then they don't know how to do it, okay? They just experience your wonderfully planned learning journey, and they don't realize all of the work that you've done for them that eventually you need to scaffold and let them do for themselves. Okay, and then the last thing you want to do, well, actually, while you're still in the performance phase, okay, so we're forethought, then performance, and then reflection, you need to be using your metacognition to check in on yourself. So you're actively working on the task and you're using the strategies, but you've got to monitor how it's going. So if it's not working, you've got to say, oh, well, that's not working. I need to think of a different way to do that. Okay, so metacognition just means thinking about your thinking. In the performance phase, students need to check in with themselves. What is the text mostly about? Do these ideas belong together, or am I including details that don't matter? Does this sentence capture the meaning of the whole text? Am I doing it in my own words, or am I just copying words? Or things like that. So that's comprehension of the task, the text, but you also need to be metacognitively monitoring whether the strategy is working. So there's a lot of things going on. Okay, so monitoring comprehension, but also monitoring strategy use. So at the start, you're going to be focusing on just the comprehension, and then you're going to sort of work into the strategy use. So helping students monitor their progress is helping them learn how to learn, which is central to both self-regulated learning and lifelong learning. All right, after you've done the task, then you're going to do reflection. So reflection is where learning becomes transferable. If they can see they've used a strategy that's worked well in this situation, they'll be able to use it in another situation. So when they're being reflective, and I've mentioned before that often students don't want you to tell them to be reflective all the time. And as a science teacher, I was okay with that. And I just said, let's evaluate, let's get some data about how that went. So, because the thing about reflection is they're going to do it to themselves anyway. I am bad at reading. I didn't do very well. So they attribute their failure to themselves rather than to their strategies. So it can be helpful to do this reflection. So then you want to give them maybe some prompts. You might say which strategy helped you the most, or which bit was tricky for you. How do you know your summary actually captures the main idea? And then they can have, some sort of concept of what they might do differently next time. So these metacognitive reflection questions can help build adaptive expertise so that students learn not just to complete the task, but to learn from their learning. This phase is also crucial for lifelong learning because it's where students begin to see themselves as agents in their own learning process. Okay, they start to understand that progress is not about innate ability, it's about choosing the right strategy, monitoring their thinking, making adjustments. So it's I recommend teaching and modeling the cycle periodically. So goal setting, strategy use, monitoring, reflection to help students build up the habits. All right, so now I want to link it into assessment 2. So it's a very open assessment. It's, it could be bigger than Ben-Hur. We need to keep it to the 2,000 word limit again. For me, these are the key areas here. So you want to do some socially orientated learning because you want to get those students to mix socially with each other. The rubric is asking you about problem solving and differentiation and transfer of learning, and it's asking you about lifelong learning. So for me, you're going to draw on all of these modules, 4, 5, and 6, for those things. So module 4, we did all the learning theories. Module 5, we've got goal setting, strategies, motivation is in there as well, and metacognition. And then next week's module is UDL, which is specifically mentioned in the assessment brief. Critical thinking and problem solving similar to each other, and flexibility is about transfer of learning. So anything that you do has to be connected to the specific scenario and justified using the theories from the unit. And, you know, the end goal is to support lifelong learning. So that's kind of the same information in a table in case you like it in a different way. All right, and I have uploaded the slides this week. So let's stop sharing and see if we have questions. So Reb is here as well to answer questions about the assessment.
Vicky, there was a question from a student that I might just mention for everyone.
Yep.
You're all good? You got me?
Yep.
Somebody asked whether they want, whether the task requires them or all of us to be writing in future tense or past tense. So when we're talking about the strategies that we're implementing, do we say, this is what I will do? Or do we say, these were the issues and so this is what I did? Either is fine. It's not a key requirement of the task to write in either way. But I will say that if you wanted to say what the outcome of your strategy was, then obviously it makes sense that you're writing in past tense. So if you wanted to say, you know, this was the issue, so this is the strategy that I used to get around that, and that resulted in X, Y, Z. You could do that. Or you could write it in future tense. This is what I would do in order to hopefully lead to this outcome. Either's fine.
I just was looking at my notes from the last workshop. We are to write in first person tense the entire time, right? That's what we were.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure if I should admit it, but I couldn't read my own handwriting.
Yeah, definitely write in first person. It makes so much sense for this assignment to write in first person because you're imagining yourself with this group of students. So it's almost like a little mini prac without it actually being a prac. So imagine that they're your students and you are the teacher. It's very I.
And I have it here marked down that you really pin back on the teal paragraph structure and not kind of bringing in outside, even past historical experiences, unless it's directly going to point towards our conclusion.
Yeah. So beautiful teal paragraphs will help you to level up your writing across all criteria, not just the writing criteria. And I will die on that hill.
I have a question regarding what is the passing criteria for this first term? Like how much should I need to get that, and then for the first...
Do students
grades
need to pass both assignments, Vicky?
I don't think so. I think they just have to get 50% overall to get a pass, and then it'll go upwards to the other grades.
All right. Okay. Because actually I have some mistake in my previous assessment because I didn't mention, and then I read so many theories. So actually I didn't know that should I need to put it like the old years, because in my theories I read so many articles and after that I have put some words in my assessment, and then I put it like old references, which is like 1970 and 1978. So my question is like, can I put instead of 1970, and then can I put like changes into 2018 or 2020, or should I need to write it the same thing?
Well, if you read Vygotsky's book from 1978, you can certainly reference that. But if you read a paper from 2019 that talked about Vygotsky's work, then you should reference the 2019 paper.
Oh, okay. Got
Okay, there's a couple of questions in the chat. So the first one says, should we write a separate paragraph on social and emotional well-being or include it within the paragraphs on differentiation, group work, problem solving skills, etc.? Either's fine, as long as you cover it. Your markers will find it. So if you are interweaving it throughout the other sections, just make sure it's not hidden. Make sure it's really clear and say, this will also support the student's social and emotional well-being through blah, blah, blah. This is important because blah, blah, blah. Just
Yes,
make
be
sure
very
it's not
explicit.
Make sure your marker doesn't have to infer, because
Yes, I was just going to say that.
oh really? Because if your
Yes, I was
marker
just going to
has
say.
to infer, it's kind of not really fair and equitable from a marking perspective, because
Yes.
if one marker can infer but another marker doesn't, it's not really fair across students. So just make it really clear, because also if you're kind of hinting at social and emotional well-being but you didn't do it on purpose, it's not really fair that a marker goes, oh, well, I could throw you some marks, for social and emotional well-being here. So make it really clear whichever way you go.
Yeah, you should always assume that your marker won't infer. Okay, so just assume they won't infer.
Make it really easy for your marker to find marks, like jam it down their throat, what you're saying, make it really explicit.
Very explicit, yes.
We're
Yeah.
we're definitely allowed to use unit readings to support our points, right? You would encourage that.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
You would encourage us to use unit readings to support our points in the
Oh,
assessment.
definitely, yes. I've tried to include a lot in this one with extra readings where you can look for stuff. But yes, try to stick with the unit ones. If you need to get other ones, that's fine. But it was a little disappointing to see some reference lists that didn't have any unit readings in them at all, and they were all external readings. So try to use them a little bit.
I have access because I'm a UQ alum and I'm an idiot and I pay for access to the library afterwards. And I saw on there they have some books that are not available on the SCU.
Yeah, that's okay.
That's okay.
That's fine. You can use those books. I'm not saying don't use them. I'm just when it just, I don't know, it feels a little bit suspicious when none of the unit readings are in there and they're all sort of wild references, and I'm looking through reference lists going, did you really read that book?
No, I definitely included them. I'm just wondering if we get penalized for using only unit
No,
readings or a mixed bag.
no,
Is it better,
no.
or demonstrating that we did go outside the course curriculum and the unit guide that you provided us? Does that give us bonus points? Obviously, all
I don't
external
think.
ones are suspicious. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, they're not. Not all external ones are suspicious. There were suspicious ones and there were less suspicious ones. I think you do need to go outside a little bit, although I did provide a lot in these ones because it's more my area of specialization, and I had a lot that I thought were really good and I wanted you to read. But yeah, you can still go and look for your own as well. But again, it's only 2,000 words. Don't put 50 references in there.
Yeah. Trying to be
That's too
concise.
many references.
Yeah. Trying to pick and choose the best references was a tough one, and the last one I can see is going to be even tougher in this one.
Yes.
Okay, there's another question in the chat here. Regarding the 3 students with a Sudanese refugee background, is it fine if one of the 3 students' parents were refugees, but the students themselves are not? That's fine. What I love about your question is that you're thinking really specifically about each student, Dylan. So you've shown me that you're thinking Okay, if I just say someone's got a Sudanese refugee background, that's pretty ambiguous. Exactly what does that mean? So I think it's great that you're getting really granular. That's fine. And the next question in the chat is, are we allowed to use unit readings to support our points? Yes. Next question.
Yes,
what are,
but hang on. I do have a caveat on that. Okay, so some of you might have got comments that said Cherry is a unit reading, but it's not a scholarly source. Okay, so not all of the readings that I've provided in the content section are scholarly sources. Some of them are websites like Simply Psychology or Very Well Mind that are not scholarly, but they are helpful when you're first breaking into a topic and you need to get a bit of background before you go off and do your own research. Okay, so if that's what that question is asking, you can use unit resources, but not the ones that are not scholarly.
Next question is, what are the passing marks for assessment 1? 50% is a pass on all assessments. And the next one is, I can divide the resolving issues part into the sections that I find important, or equally divide into the dot points given in the rubric. I don't understand that. Do you understand that, Vicky? I don't understand
No,
what
I
that's
can't even
asking.
see that. I
Ma'am,
can't even.
Oh, that's a direct message to me, that one.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I have a question. Like, what are the the question is asking what are the passing marks for assessment 1? So, is it for the both assessment 1 and assessment 2, or like assessment 1 is 50%?
You have to get a pass mark here at this university is always 50%. So if you
For
want
the
to know what the
both
pass
assessment?
mark for the whole subject, the pass mark will be 50% overall.
Okay. So it means like it's 100% marks and you have to take like 50% at least.
Yes, for the whole subject, yes. So if
Yeah.
you got
Okay.
40
Yeah.
on the first assignment and then you got more on the second assignment, so you didn't get 50%, you got 40% on the first one, you need to get more than 50% on the second one in order to get the whole mark up to 50%.
Yeah, because I got it 25 or something because I did some mistakes on my first assessment. So that's why I want to do some better in next one. That's why I just asked you.
Yeah. And what was your other question, Rip?
Yes, I'll just explain the question that I asked. So,
is this
the
your
rubric,
one?
there is like resolving learning issues, and you have 5 dot points that we have to cover. And we have like about 1200 words given to this resolving learning issue. So, can I like separate out if I can give the first 2 dot points more of a coverage area and the rest of the 3 not as much, but I will go into detail for the first 2 because I feel like the classroom will be better off if I explain this better.
Okay, so there's the thing for context, Rip.
Oh, thank you. So you're wanting to know whether it's okay if you talk more about some points than others?
Yes.
Yep. Well, that's your call, really. I mean, it's an open-ended task. So if you look at the rubric and make sure that you are allocating your word count, appropriately to what the weighting is in the rubric, that would be a wise choice.
Okay. All right.
So there's a rubric item. I'm going off memory now. So there's a rubric item for each one of these 5, isn't there? And it's about.
No, it's sort of a bit. It doesn't go exactly to those 5. I don't believe it does. See how those 5 are: teaching strategies, problem solving and collaboration, differentiation, social participation, and multicultural lifelong learning. And then we've got cultural linguistic, and then we've got modifications to curriculum content and instructional processes, differentiation, social and emotional, and multicultural. So roughly yes.
Yeah. And you are right in that the multicultural and social and emotional rubric items, I think they were both 15%, was it, Vicky? And the others are 20. So it's usually wise to allocate slightly more of a word count to the criteria that have a larger weighting so that you have more scope to go into a bit more detail on those meatier rubric items.
Yeah.
Vicky, we want to avoid bullet points in our submission, don't we?
Yes, it's not, well, what do you think, Reb? This is a different thing. This is a case study rather than a portfolio. So I'll defer to Reb.
Yeah, narrative is best. We don't
Yeah.
want to see a whole list of bullet points.
Sure.
Yeah, it's better if you can kind of weave it in.
Yep. Thank you.
And that would be reflected in your writing criteria, which was the last couple of criteria were around writing and APA 7. So if you covered everything off, you know, pretty well and actually met all of the criteria of the task, but, you know, it was just a lot of bullet points and sub bullet points and not really using paragraphs, it would be that writing criteria that would be penalised for that.
Except that sometimes when you do a bullet point, you're not giving all of the information. Like when you do it as a bullet point instead of a sentence, you're not putting any context around it. So it could affect other ones as well.
Mm.
Wouldn't that leave that open to interpretation from the assessor? Again, not like leading them to insinuate what's missing.
No, we would just not insinuate. And so then it's going to affect your other mark.
Gotcha.
So
So
it'll
it
reflect one of
it really is better just to not use the bullet points at all.
Yeah. Bullet points normally reflect that someone's just done a brain dump and hasn't really thought too deeply about it. I mean, how often do you see, you know, bullet points going off into elaborations and examples with citations?
No, never. It's like a footnote.
Hardly ever, pretty much never. So there's a purpose for bullet points, and it's when you're listing, you know, a short number of things. And a written academic paper is not the place for a list of bullet points where you're expected to show depth, you know, for whatever it is that you're talking about. A teal paragraph will trump a list of bullet points every time. Also, how many references are considered okay? I think it was 5. Is that right, Vicky?
I don't think it says it in this one.
Doesn't it?
No. It's what's that middle one? The credit level says competent referencing style and use of literature to explain a point of view. I think you're going to end up with more than 5 just by the number of different things that you have to include. So that the key here will be not including an excessive amount of literature, okay? Because that's just eating up your words when you put that many references in. Obviously, the reference list itself doesn't count, but you still got to do all that in-text citations. And if you jump around too many different things, it sometimes it doesn't help to prove your point when you're jumping around between different references. We don't need like multiple people confirming the same thing. Not in this level of assignment.
Quality and relevance over quantity.
Yes.
And somebody sent me a direct message asking when, if you had an extension, when do you receive your results? It'll be within 7 days of your submission date.
All right. Any other
Uh,
questions?
is there any extension for second assessment?
You have to apply for special consideration to get an extension.
Oh, okay.
I have a question, Vicky, but not so much about this workshop. Is that okay, or should I wait till after you
Yeah.
stop recording? Are you going to come back to the toots, or is Duncan our toot for the remainder of the semester, or is it term?
Duncan will do next week as well.
Okay.
I'm
If
still
we have any
on.
questions, can we still shoot you a line, or should we just forward this?
Yes,
question
of
to Duncan?
course.
Okay.
Yeah, of course. I'm still doing tutorials, just not that 10 o'clock one.
Just not mine.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I'm
No,
doing the
it's
ones
okay.
this afternoon and tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you.
No worries.
You could always watch Vicky's online ones if you like Vicky's style.
It's the question and answer part that I like so much with Vicky.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why it's always good to go live if you can.
I 100% agree.
Yeah.
I just can't. I have to go teach at my school from 4 to 9 every night. So I don't have the opportunity to meet any of the evening workshop. I'm very lucky that I can get to your workshops before then.
Yeah. Okay, when constructing the hypothetical scenario, does it need to be probable or plausible one? Would an appendix be appropriate that informs the scenario, or can it be just assumed to just be true? We're going to assume that it's true, Dylan. Right, if no one
Dylan,
else...
sorry, I was just going
Yep.
to mention, Dylan, I can see that you're prone to a lot of thinking about the task. Don't overthink the scenarios. It's just, don't overthink like your example, your applied example. Just be like, if I'm teaching year 3, that tadpoles come out of an egg and then grow up to be a frog, this is how I would group the students. We don't need like 200 words explaining what's going on before you get to the strategies. I have 4,000 words on a fake school from the last essay that wasn't included. Do you mean like context? Did you want to turn your microphone on and maybe say, so this is stuff that you cut out of your first assignment?
No, it wasn't necessarily cut. So I'm trying to think about behaviors and responses that both fit the way that the theory suggests things are responsive and develop. That there's a kind of I have a very difficult time about prognosticating about the results of fictional characters and locations and situations that have no basis in reality, applying theories and techniques that I've never used before, and then guessing what happens afterwards without like building a narrative structure around the outside of it. I have no intention of including any of this material in any of these essays, but like it's processed.
Yes, it is a process, Dylan, and I agree that I also find it really hard to make that stuff up. But I think that the strategy that you've got there of just trying to build it yourself and then write about it, that's a fine strategy. And, I guess just don't spend too long on the background stuff so that you've still got time to do the other stuff. But I do understand what you're saying about I can't do those hypothetical things either.
Is there anything from your 4,000 words on the last one that you can repurpose? You can use that fake school that you developed for the last one, for this one?
Yes. Yep, a lot. And
okay, well, that's good.
Yeah, I mean, it's a sort of a setting to draw material from if I need to do hypotheticals, and I can drag and drop new elements such as, a Sudanese classroom for students and Aboriginal classmates and so on and so forth as the need arises.
Yeah. I wouldn't recommend putting it in the appendix though, just to answer your question.
Well, I'm more talking about like looking at statistical data for migration patterns of Sudanese refugees to come up, like, if the character, if one of the students' parents moved or were refugees at one point or another, like, and I say it was 1993, for instance, it doesn't have to be, but, like, if there's a sharp drop in Sudanese refugees in 1993, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Nobody will know. We will just believe whatever you tell us.
That's the impression that I'm getting. So now I'm
Yes.
like, okay.
We will believe whatever scenario you give us, and then we will assess whether what you said works in that scenario. Is that
There's
okay?
always
Does that
exceptions
sound
to the
okay?
rule,
Got it.
Dylan. Even if they were the only people that migrated here, then they ended up in your class.
Yes, that's very true. But also, I don't want my a hypothetical scenario that's supposed to be responsive to realistic teaching scenarios to be the solution to a 1 in a million situation necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
But yes,
Well,
point taken. I
yeah,
got it.
all right. Awesome. All right. Does anyone else have any questions?
No, thank you.
All right. Well, I'm going to go because I'm going to get ready for the toot. So I will see you all next week, unless I see you in the toot.
Thank you, Vicky.
Thank you,
Thank
Vicky
you.
and Maddie.
Bye.
Thank you, ma'am. Bye.